Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our webinar series, The Power of Sourcing. My name is Adrian Kolf, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Matcher. And more importantly, I will be your host today. Now, if you haven't already, please follow us on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And if you have any questions, please shoot them in the chat. And also share where you're from and what you're currently passionate about, or some of the recruiting roles that you're working on, or whatever you are doing in terms of sourcing, because we would love to hear from you. I will collect all the answers at the end of Alan's presentation, and then we'll do a quick Q&A session. So let me tell you a little bit more about Matcher. Because with Matcher, we provide embedded talent solutions to startups, scale-ups, and corporates, whereby companies hire dedicated sourcing or recruitment teams and pay a fixed fee per source or per recruiter per month, giving them the flexibility to quickly scale up and scale down based on their business needs, hire a specific set of skills that they're lacking in their current team, and or have support in a specific geography where they don't have any presence. Now, if you could use any flexible sourcing or recruitment support, please let us know, because we would love to get in touch with you. And we recently launched our new services, whereby we also do tailored sourcing workshops on DEI, on tools, on AI. So if that's something that you would be interested in, then please let us know as well. Now, this webinar series would have not been made possible without our partner, Deal. And I would love to show you a short video of what Deal does and why it's not only the company that we work with, but also have been proud to actually help source and recruit, because they are growing so rapidly.
Work's gone global, but until now, no HR platform has been able to handle everything for everyone. Some teams have to use up to 16 different tools to make things work. Deal's the future of global HR, and it's the only platform that works for your team wherever they are, whatever their status. Easily handle international hiring, payroll, and HR with one powerful platform. Hire contractors and employees worldwide, even if you don't own an entity. Once you find a candidate, onboard them with a localized contract and a visa if needed. We even provide powerful salary insights, so you can be sure your offer's competitive, and we'll automatically collect any necessary compliance documents. Get your team set up fast with built-in background checks, equipment, WeWork passes, and effortless app access. Then manage the entire worker lifecycle through one central HR platform designed with global teams in mind. Plus, handle time off, promotions, and bonuses all in a few clicks. Deal integrates with any tool to help keep your data and workflows synced. You'll get a first-of-its-kind worldview of your entire team's headcount, payroll, and productivity in one place. On payday, consolidate payroll for contractors, international, and local employees. We'll take care of the contractor invoicing, plus employee taxes, benefits, pay slips, and more. Deal has everything you need to run a global team efficiently, and it's the only platform built for everyone and everything, everywhere. Learn how Deal can simplify your global team needs at deal.com.
Yes, so that's Deal. We use Deal ourselves as a company, and what has also been pretty exciting, we've worked in Q3 and Q4 with Alan Price, our current keynote speaker, to help him scale up his engineering team. So I'm greatly honored to not only share that Alan will be your keynote speaker, but also that we've actually worked quite successfully with Alan and his team. So please welcome on stage Alan Price, the head of TA of Deal. Alan.
Hey, how you doing?
Welcome. Great to have you, Alan. And I know life is very, very hectic here for you in many different aspects. Am I correct to say that Deal is the fastest growing SaaS company to ever reach 100 million ARR?
Yeah, to the ARR that we have today, yes, that's correct. Yeah. Beating a lot of the other SaaS B2Bs.
So tell me a little bit more about, when you jumped in terms of what was happening and what you have to achieve in terms of hiring, being a fully remote company with all the pros and the cons that come with that.
Well, being a remote company has a number of different benefits, right? As we all see, has some drawbacks or some kind of considerations that we have to think about. Having the remote nature of being able to hire anywhere in the world really opens up our talent pool. We get something like 33,000 applications on a weekly basis, for instance. So
Wow.
It's insane the amount of interest that there is. Access to talent, etc. Obviously, there's the benefits of being able to work remotely. I'm in my house at the moment. You know, I've got my daughter in the background making some noise.
Yeah, I love it.
Apologies if she's going to be making some noise, but if I was in the office until 7-8 o'clock, I wouldn't be able to see, you know, my daughter kind of as much as what I do, right? So that's a massive benefit. But then the connection with working with different employees around the world, right? It's an online relationship versus a physical relationship. So there's differences. Like we do make up for it in terms of offsites and events and all of these things. But having that Thursday evening beer definitely is missed.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to speak today. I'm really excited to learn from you and hear what you have to say. So, Alan, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much for the warm welcome and introduction, Adrian. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more holistically about navigating the talent kind of frontier, right? And 5 insights of modern sourcing as I see them, right? Some of them are bets, some of them are what I see, but excited to share a little bit more. Firstly, let me just talk you through my background. So I currently manage the TA team globally here at Deal. We've got about 50 employees on our TA team, ranging from people that are hiring for our sales teams, our operations teams, our G&A teams, and our R&D teams, distributed fully around the world. We've got employees in, I think it's over 105, 106 countries, right? So it's a real diverse workforce, should we say. So I've been at Deal for 1 year. Prior to Deal, I was part of the founding team of a company called Dot. For those of you in Europe, it's electric scooters, electric bikes all across Europe. So pretty interesting from not having a email address, employment contracts, you know, entities created. Probably part of the reason why I joined Deal. I experienced this huge pain like 4 or 5 years ago. And used to run all of the people and talent acquisition teams. Prior to that, was at Uber, Wolt, and Google. So pretty kind of eclectic mix. You'll notice that I typically tend to work for companies that have only 4 letters. So and Google was 10 years ago. So hopefully, so I want to talk to you a little bit today about AI. And how that's going to play a role in sourcing kind of moving forward, and what is it that sourcing and recruiting can do in order to evolve with technology and adding real value to different businesses, different stakeholders, our function, etc. So I want to touch a little bit on candidate rediscovery, focus on real-time data-driven recruiting, nurturing talent beyond 3-stage kind of emails. Forecasting and capacity planning, I think, is very important, right? Especially as our roles in recruiting and sourcing evolve. And just to have a recap at the end, hopefully there's sparks some questions, and please ask questions in the chat. Very happy to dedicate some time at the end and run through that. So first things first. So AI and AI co-pilots for kind of recruiting and sourcing. So you probably would see that the TA infrastructure of how we go about sourcing is changing, right? and there will be significant moves to automate much of what sourcing does today. When we start to evaluate the different companies that are launching different automations for how to do sourcing, I believe that the role will change fundamentally in terms of how we create Boolean strings, how we source on our internal databases, how we source externally, how we look at percentage matches of profiles and CVs through to job descriptions. And it's really become more and more and more laser focused and data driven. So our roles will change. And it's still a human sport, like people connect with humans. But I do see a lot of automation happening within the sourcing space as of today. And I'll share with you an insight for us. So today we have approximately about 32,000 applications on a weekly basis. So when you look at that and you say, hey, well, how many CV reviews are we doing, right? And if you calculate on average, let's say it's just 1 minute per CV, including kind of emails and all of these things, to process 1.5 million CVs this year is going to equate to about 26,000 hours of CV reviews with no toilet breaks, with all of these things, right? It's going to be it's a huge amount. So from a recruiting perspective, you're probably going to need, as I say, 20 or so recruiters just to go through CVs, or at any one point in time, just to review these CVs and progress candidates and have a great candidate experience. And what we see more and more is automation, and stack ranking CVs have been around, but with a lot of the different AI tools to be able to program in what successful kind of hires look like. When you look at past hires, correlating that back to employees that have very high performance there, what are the key themes, and AI, etc., is going to play a fundamental role to that, whilst also trying to identify and match similar profiles to what you're tending to hire for today. There's a lot of considerations around diversity and talent cloning and all of these things, but fundamentally, to solve that problem of 1.5 million applications, you will automate a number of those different areas. I think there's a unique opportunity for recruiting and sourcing to take back a lot more time, especially through that CV review or internal sourcing or even outbound sourcing, to be able to create meaningful connections and communities of different folks kind of moving forward, versus, by the most part, reaching out to candidates, targeted campaigns, 3-stage emails, and ultimately, hiring for the role that happens kind of today. So I think that there's going to be a lot of change within this space. So I've touched on the stack ranking of applications and CVs. I think AI is going to play more of a role in terms of video interviewing, like you take for the case MetaView or Bright Hire, or to a certain extent Gong and other platforms. Being able to record interactions online is going to continue to be a prevailing way in which recruiting opens up the black box of what happens in an interview, right? Apart from getting kind of feedbacks written down, you don't necessarily know how that interview kind of happens, right? And if there's candidate experience topics or employer value proposition kind of trainings or development, or being able to match skills with your assessment criteria and your interviewing process, and then those ongoing trainings, there will be a significant continuation. It's already happened, but a continuation of AI around being able to uncover the black box in terms of like how that interview actually kind of happens. So being able to, it starts with, or it has started previously with being able to transcribe the voice to text, and then writing quite comprehensive kind of recruiter notes. It continues to evolve. So we've started to see that AI, you're starting to be able to ask Chat GPT style questions. So if you forget certain points of the candidate, so hey, what was the candidate's compensation, for instance, or what their notice period was, or whatever the question, you can ask Chat GPT style questions to say, what was this candidate's notice period? What was this candidate's salary expectations? But more broadly, it will start to evolve more and more to be able to say, what was the percentage of situational, behavioral, skill-based questions in that interviewing process? Rank the interviewer from novice, intermediate, advanced. All of these things, these things are definitely kind of coming, right? Or at least in some instances already here. Inbound sourcing, I think that there's going to be more automation, and when the power of the technology is there, so you're able to look at what are the skills. We've just released this new job. What are the skills that we're looking for? And you have the job description, you have your competency grids, etc., and then AI is going to be able to flesh out percentage of match fits for candidates almost instantaneously. So who's on the database that could be a match? Who's external? Who's on LinkedIn that could be a match? And then being able to float up those profiles, obviously for recruiting and sourcing, need to evolve in order to start to create those personal relationships. I'll come onto that in a moment. But yeah, the way of recruiting and sourcing will change fundamentally over the next two years or so. So talk a little bit about candidate rediscovery. So as I mentioned before, recruiting is a human contact, but our approach, as I say, needs to change. If we were to leverage AI and a lot of the capabilities that is proving or coming, shall we say, in the already today or in the future, then you need to be able to develop those personal connections, those personal communities. I do believe that, the role of attraction around getting people excited and attracted to the company will wear many different hats. Yes, there's going to be some sourcing and some outreach. There's going to be more integrations with marketing and more integrations with employer value propositions and employer branding, etc., to ultimately look at the top of the funnel and how do we leverage campaigns. Could be via sourcing, could be via marketing, it could be via online events, it could be via physical in-person events, depending on the nature of your organization, if you're hubbed in an office or if you're distributed or partly distributed. But those roles are going to kind of merge as opposed to today. I think they're a little bit more kind of siloed, right? You're in the sourcing team, but you're not necessarily doing as much work. Maybe you are in some instances, but across the board, as much work related to some of the other top of the funnel kind of activities. CRM and internal sourcing. So today we look at CRMs, we have lists of candidates, we outreach to those candidates, etc. We need to make sure that we start to develop those human contacts, not necessarily always relying on, the standard formatting of let's reach out to a candidate using a kind of what you can tell quite clearly is like a cookie cutter thing. I think that there'll be more personalization. As we move towards more automation in terms of systems, people won't want to feel like they've been automated in terms of a process. So therefore, the level of human interaction, I believe, will need to change in order to make sure that you're an employer that stands out as as people centric and people first, whilst leveraging some of the automation. One of the areas that we've seen some really great success, and I think across the board when I speak to different heads of TAs and recruiters across the areas, is boomerang employees. They understand your team, they understand your culture, etc., etc. For one reason or another, they thought that the grass was greener somewhere else, or there was a better opportunity, etc. But boomerang employees can be really valuable and really really a great channel. So encourage people to continue to do or dive more into boomerang employees. It's the same that goes to be said in terms of kind of silver medalists, right? They apply for a role, they didn't quite have the level of coding, for instance, for a software engineer. They weren't quite at that senior level, and they were a senior somewhere else, when you felt they were more of a mediator, mediator. So being able to then create that great candidate experience through that process, and then continue to be in contact, continue to develop those personal relationships with those silver medalists, and then over a period of time, they will grow their experience and responsibilities, and therefore maybe there's some great opportunities to re-engage in silver medalists. It doesn't just start with seeing, I've got a new job, how do I do a report for who were silver medalists and contact them 6 to 9 months later. Is a frequency of contact, I believe, that will be a good experience for candidates as they come through the process. Focus on real-time data-driven kind of recruiting. So I firmly believe that we're going to be moving more and more in this direction. I know a lot of other companies already kind of have, but I see this continuing to be a trend moving forwards. So I mentioned at the start, sourcing channel efficiency. So yes, you may be doing a lot of proactive kind of sourcing on LinkedIn or GitHub, Stack Overflow, or any other channels, or inbound, outbound on your applicant tracking system. But I do believe as you start to look more and more at the channel distribution of where your hires are coming from, albeit if it's inbound, if it's silver medalists, if it's boomerangs, if it's LinkedIn or any of the other outbound tools that are there, marketing, referrals, all of these areas, sourcing will play more of a role in optimizing various channels across the stack, rather than just kind of sitting on LinkedIn kind of every day and treating that as the source, or maybe 2 or 3 sources of outbound. I think what we've started to see a lot is talent demand forecasting. So if we understand, and there's a real partnership to understand what's going on in the business, because if you know that there's going to be, for instance, I'll give you an example. So we're doubling down a lot in some of our product suites, and if we were to take on 30, 40, 50 more roles without having that business relationship to really understand the plan and what's coming up, then you're not able to create those pipelines, be able to get ahead of that work kind of a lot earlier, and then you almost get the ask a little bit too late, and then you're chasing your tail, right, to make sure that you're delivering those hires. So increased amount of demand forecasting, partnering with the business, being able to look at future hires. I remember when I was at Google years ago, and we were doing a lot of hiring around legal, and it was a lot of things about the right to be forgotten, co-location, and data centers, and all of these things. And we really kind of saw that there would be a big need for lawyers to either have 2 things. Number one was those commercial contracts specifically around these type of data topics, as well as as well as some experts within that field. So we started to really map out the entire space of who are the players, who is our acquisition channel. Were they coming from competitors who have done it before? Were they coming from practice, legal companies, etc., etc. And then being able to say, this is the total addressable market. These are all of the candidates that have that experience, and really being able to then start to connect with those folks ahead of time, building those relationships. So we started to drip feed, where we knew that there was a couple of roles coming, but we knew that there would be a huge volume of hires that we'd need to do over the long term. So it wasn't just about finding 6 or 7 or 10. It was really mapping out that entire space and then creating those relationships and those networks. So after 6 months, whatever it is of those contacts, then you'd get the proactive messages coming back to say, hey, you know, we'd had coffee, we'd done this, we'd connected on this piece. And then there was a lot of that was our talent pipeline. We knew that, and we knew fundamentally that would change over a long period of time. So a little bit more work around that, I think, is going to be the real value add of sourcing and recruiting. Talent performance prediction. And so as you look at performance evaluations at certain times of the year, that you see folks kind of coming and leaving the organizations, being able to get ahead of that in terms of again that talent pipelines, etc., planning ahead. So when eventualities kind of happen, then you're able to be very agile and move at great speed to facilitate the business criticality of some of the talent requirements that come up over time. Predictive kind of candidate engagement, I think, is also quite interesting to see. I think that we see a little bit of, some of the fundamentals and pillars, right? If you normally have a very efficient interviewing process, time kills all deals. Like that was said to me a long time ago, like in agency, and I still believe that to be the case. But really having very insightful conversations during the interview process. These are all kind of predictive kind of pieces, right? And this is not new, but I still think that the candidate experience and candidate engagement as to how likely they are to accept will continue to be a theme moving forward. Next is kind of nurturing beyond the 3-stage email. So I think when I speak a lot to like recruiting and like recruiters and all of these and managers within this space, if I was to ask, what is the value proposition? What is your employer value proposition? How does that link to kind of candidate motivations? I think a lot of people relate why they should join a company. And if you're being proactive with sourcing, then you really need to get this really right. What I see a lot is, hey, we're this startup, we've got this billion valuation, for instance. I'm just using experience, right? But one example. So, hey, we're this startup, we're valued at this billion. These are the investors. This is the CEO. This is our leadership team. You know, we're growing like crazy. Our revenue's growing. Headcount's growing. Like this is the pre-IPO. This is the best place to work, right? And whilst that may be true for a certain percentage of the people that you speak to, you're not really understanding the motivation and the need, right? So being able to link your employer value proposition to kind of candidate motivations and really doing that discovery during the entire process, not just doing a recruiter screen and then, letting kind of the process kind of dictate and then, hey, great, you've got an offer. And then at the end of it is like, this is the best place to work, right? Really need to identify and do that discovery around affinity and reputation. Like, what is it specifically that they like about their company, about the industry, all of these things that may be a motivating factor for them. It may not be a motivating factor. Being able to understand kind of culture or the people. Do they make decisions by they want to work for a particular person during the interviewing kind of process, right? And they really get inspired by someone, or is it that it's the nature of work, right? Do they like the nature of work that they're going to be doing? Like, is this something that they've done in the past, or is this something that is a step up for them, or it's a tech stack that they've had affinity towards but haven't really kind of dived solely on this problem space with the tech stack? It could be about personal growth, that they're not feeling rewarded within their current organization and need to have the personal growth, financial reward, like what is the salary, what is the compensation, like all of these things, and associated kind of benefits. Now, that doesn't just mean your benefits package of a 401k or a pension, or like the ping pong table or free food or whatever it is. It's also, how does it fit into your lifestyle? So the remote work piece, I think, is start to come into the fore here. And what I believe is that to really do that discovery, to understand, okay, I want to be, someone might say, I want to be financially rewarded. I want to have I didn't get this promotion. I think I'm ready for it. And therefore it's, like financial rewards, especially for like a salesperson, for instance. That may, just because they've said it, that may not be the actual case. Maybe they're looking at personal growth and nature of work are the two main priority areas, which are linked to affinity and reputation of the organization. Because if they know that they're doing meaningful and interesting work at a fast-paced growing organization, and therefore they would then believe to have personal growth within that, financial reward would come. So maybe they list financial reward as number one, but that may not always be true. Maybe some of those other components, and it's actually kind of fourth on the list, because if they do those three things really well, then financial reward will come with responsibility and growth. And I see a lot that we don't always link the value proposition. We have our own version of why someone should join, and these are the reasons why you joined, or the talking points of the organization, but you need to relate that back to the candidate, especially during the sourcing kind of phase. And I think that different recruiters do it well, but I think across the board there needs to be an evolution in the space here. Marketing campaigns, I think I've touched on that a little bit kind of earlier. Try not to continue. I think the 3-stage email is a good way, but don't think about how you're engaging, like doing a number of other ways, because it's very obvious, especially if like AI is becoming more and more kind of prevalent. Then it's very obvious that you're in a 3-stage email sequence. So try and be a little bit more personable during your outreach, and then community kind of engagement, right? So if your role is sourcing and recruiting, you've got to be kind of quite proactive in the space. Really understand the talent community. Invest in time, such as these events and such as physical events, to connect with recruiters and recruiting managers and heads of TA. I do a lot of that, just to understand what's going on at other organizations, to potentially kind of bring some of that best practice back to how we're thinking about it. And if we're rolling out or looking at a new tooling or system, I'm always going to be on the phone with people that have implemented new tools and getting their advice, getting their feedback. In turn, I also kind of give some time as well if people want to ask me questions about some of the things that we've done. So really investing in those online events, etc., etc. It was quite surprising to us, actually, when in January, for instance, our sales team in the US, globally actually, was like, we need to hire a huge amount of staff. I'm talking like hundreds of sales folks, and we need to do it in a very consolidated kind of space and time. And we're fully remote, so we weren't always, and a lot of us have done, especially at Uber and other places, we've done like happy hours and things. So inviting people to the office, having some drinks, talking about why they should join and what the roles are, nature of work, the culture within the organization. And for us, we can't do that physical spaces because we hire anywhere in the world. So we came across and say, hey, well, let's just try it online and see if that works. We're not entirely sure if people would turn up. We've got no idea, right? But we were surprised. We didn't put too much money actually at all. I don't think we put any money on kind of marketing this event. We simply created a Eventbrite link. We got managers and employees to promote that on their LinkedIn just through personal posts. We had something like 1,500 signups within a week, and then invited also current candidates into the process, as well as these new applications and referrals and all of these things. So we had 1,500 signups. We got 650 people join the event, like online. And then I think one of the managers was really surprised because we hired something like 18 sales folks, like account executives, within 38 days for his team, and it beat all of our expectations by a significant area. So community events are definitely kind of, especially when we move more remotely or within a global distributed kind of workforce, community events need to be top of mind for a lot of people. And then number 5 is forecasting and capacity planning. So there's a lot of agility that is needed within the TA landscape as of today. So there's changing business needs. There may be kind of an acquisition that is happening, or there's a new product line being built, or there's reinvestment in all of these areas, and we really need to understand, forecast, capacity plan, turn that into sourcing strategies and recruiting strategies, versus being, in some instances that I've had in the past, like the last people to hear that we're growing or expanding in this particular area, and you get a wave of vacancies, and instead of having fun surfing the wave, you're drowning under it and you're fighting for your life trying to breathe. So that's definitely more. And then historical data, right? So likely of success. So when you look at candidate conversion rates, when you look at really kind of taking a data-driven approach to your talent pipelines, being able to kind of forecast a lot more, et cetera, I think is just a continuation of some of the good work that I've seen in the past. So I think we're maybe got 20 or so minutes. There's a couple of kind of free resources I just want to highlight. I'll just pause on this space for the moment. So number 1 is we've released a report, the state of global hiring. So please scan that QR code. And then there's also kind of a number of different courses that we operate around, courses around global hiring kind of fundamentals. So encourage you to use these QR codes, take advantage of some of the resource that we're that we're putting out into the marketplace. And I'm very happy to answer if there's questions in the chat, or if there's don't know how it works. Adrian, help me out here. How does it?
Yeah, Alan, great. I'm here. Adrian to the rescue. Great presentation, Alan. Really appreciate it. A lot of nuggets of wisdom. Zoe asked in the chat, how do you go through? So the funny thing is, he probably thought that I might have misheard you because he typed 3,000 CVs, but it's 33,000.
33,000 on a weekly basis.
On a weekly basis. So how do you handle that amount of volume?
With great difficulty. If you ask our TA teams, it's just being able to provide a great candidate experience when you're dealing with that huge volume is I have a lot of empathy for the team. It's really very challenging. I think you have to put time into making sure you structure your weeks and make sure that you kind of keep clean pipelines. but that's an interim or short-term measure. It's not. It's that problem is still going to exist next week and the following week. So the question we ask ourselves is: do we want to invest in efficiency, i.e., stack ranking with AI and all of these things, or do we want to build and grow more of the team to deal with more of the volumes? And also, what we see, especially where you see a lot of applications coming in for a number of different countries, etc., etc. It's not always as targeted to what you're looking for. So if you're looking for an account executive, for instance, in the Netherlands, you need to speak Dutch, right? You need to understand the local marketplace, and we get a lot of people that don't speak Dutch, and or aren't living here, and being able to connect with clients that are in this world, right? So we do need to invest in AI. It's just a harsh reality, but we need to work with AI as opposed to seeing it as a threat. And I think actually that the people that are able to leverage and to get some real economies of scale within and using AI to the full force and functionality versus just continuing to do the role of a sourcer that existed kind of a few years ago. I think the role is changing, and we need to adapt with the times.
So have you already landed on an AI tool that can help you?
We're looking at a number of things. So that's all I can say on that.
Okay. All right. So
we have a lot of AI, and as part of Deal, right? We have a lot of AI. I think that we've just launched. I saw it on LinkedIn today. We just launched an integration with Slack, so you're able to ask AI kind of questions around HR questions, for instance, like what is a typical notice period? Normal questions around employment, around what is the visa application process, all of these things you can start to ask within a Slack environment. So that's a Deal, a use of Deal. So in terms of AI, so Deal are using a lot of AI to be able to answer questions, put the knowledge firsthand into the people that are asking those questions, and also incorporating that into our HR platform, etc., etc. So there's plenty of work that's being done across the board, and for TA, we're also trying to leverage as much AI as we can with the existing resources that we have available to us.
Yeah, fascinating to see how quick things are moving. Hey, Alan, from your point of view, how do you work with both sourcers and recruiters, and what's your kind of like view on like the optimal ratio? Tell me a little bit more about that on sourcing versus recruitment. And when do you see that sourcers come into play? When do you see that recruiters are a better fit?
I see that it probably evolves, but I see that there's probably three types of recruiting, kind of sourcing, right? Ignore seniorities for the moment, but there's three different types. So you've got a sourcer which is looking at top of the funnel activity, right? So it could be you're doing market mapping at company level. It could be you're doing market mapping at candidate level. It might be you're driving insights to the business. It can be, hey, well, should we invest more and more into Brazil, for instance? And what is the talent evaluation like for a software engineer in Brazil? How does that compare to Mexico? How do we spend some of our marketing dollars on targeted campaigns or sourcing efforts into those geographies, right? So and then there's also a piece there of kind of outreach and looking at volumes, working with your CRM, all of these things. So that's like the pure play sourcer that has existed, and will continue to exist, right? Then you've got like a hybrid that we typically that we kind of have, and it works quite well, which is if you're working on kind of evergreen roles. So if you take, for instance, a back-end engineer in Europe, then you then for this particular type of recruiter, it's about you don't get any inbound. You don't get any of the applications coming in. That goes to a full cycle recruiter, for instance. So you're more of a sourcing recruiter, a hybrid between the two, where you're doing the outbound, you're doing the proactive piece, you're interviewing candidates, you're taking them through the process, and you're driving them through those funnels, but you maintain that candidate relationship and that candidate management, and then you've got kind of recruiters who are doing the applications, they're doing some sourcing as well, etc., but they also have a lot more kind of inbound, and then they're reviewing the CVs, they're doing a little bit more potentially on stakeholder management and pipeline management, pipeline reporting, all of these things, whereas that middle of sourcing recruiter is just heads down, these are the vacancies, and you're very candidate focused.
Clear. Hey, Alan, a question from Alina. So Alina's based in the US, and she asked, how do you identify the right people with the amount of volume that you just described, based on Zoe's question? And do you look for 90 to 100% match with the job requirements, or what is it?
No, we tend to, it varies. It really varies because it depends on the role type. But how we think about it as of today is you've got four main buckets that we evaluate. One is functional skills. So if I take, for instance, a software engineer, can you code on Node.js? Can you code on like TypeScript or Java or whatever the platform is? Like, what are your functional skills? You typically tend to look at those and evaluate those through a code review, for instance, right? Then you've got your functional practices as a second bucket. This is, are you launching a product and you're doing 2-week sprints? Are you launching a product over 6 months? Like, what is the processes that you use? You might have the functional skills, but how do you evaluate the processes, right? Then you've got your behaviors and your cultural fit. So what are the behaviors that you're looking to see? So collaboration, communication. If it's a software engineer, I'll just use that example. How do you collaborate with a product manager, for instance, or someone within the data team, or et cetera, et cetera? How do you work together in those cross-functional or matrix teams in order to drive the output that you're all looking for? Because you could have the right code, but if you don't have that degree of collaboration, for instance, and alignment and partnership, then it's not really necessarily going to work. And then number 4 is you've got like business success. And business success can be, well, I've done this in the past, right? Which is fine. Or I've done it in the present, or do I have confidence that they'll have the right business success in order to get to it in the future? So just to recap, functional skills, functional practices, behaviors, and business impact. And then you can drill down of the 2 or 3, 4 categories within functional skills or functional practices. What are you trying to solve today? And then in terms of percentage fits and matches and all of these things, it really depends on the dynamic of the team. Because it could be, for instance, if we're, today we're going a multi-product offering, right? We do payroll, we do HR information system, we do EORs, we do a deal shield, we do a number of different areas. So what is the dynamic? Do you want to have like a blend within the team? Like at Google, we also used to look at 33% kind of industry people, 33% kind of past experiences, right? And then 33% kind of googly, right? And then you'd look at harmonization in terms of that team, right? Because some of these skills can be taught and tested. It might be that you have, for a salesperson, it might be that you have the right behaviors, the right practices. We believe that you could probably get there in terms of business impact, but you don't necessarily have all of the skills in your toolkit today. But we're confident that we're able to train, nurture, and develop. So therefore, you can take 60, 70, 80% kind of matches and be confident in your training and development programs. So it really depends on where the organization is.
For you, within Deal, right, fully remote company, how do you decide where to hire or what kind of like talent? Like, what's the philosophy there?
For us, it really starts with like the role, right? Because If you're in software engineering, for instance, then we typically look at different hubs and different leaderships. So it could be that we prioritize kind of EMEA time zones versus kind of LATAM time zones, right? Because we create pods. Now, in the sense of like different areas, like if you're running payroll, for instance, and you're running it for the Netherlands, you probably need to like have run payroll in the Netherlands previously, right? So therefore, you're probably centered around that. However, we tend to see that we've got a lot of, our sales folks, for instance, covering the Netherlands market. Some of them are in Spain, some of them are in hotter climates where it's not raining as much, right? So it really depends on that, and we leverage a lot of referrals as well. So it really just depends on the role type and what we're looking for.
Where do you think Deal's going to stop? What's the future of Deal with your current growth rate? What's the kind of like North Star?
Well, I don't know if we should be kind of sharing that on a public forum, but I think in general, like, you should consider Deal as the global place to solve a lot of your people kind of topics and challenges around the world, right? Where we started as a EOR, right, to be able to hire anyone in anywhere around the world. That takes a lot of commitment in terms of creating entities right around the world in order to hire and taking some of that pain away. It does take a lot of time, but we're in I think it's like about 140, 150 countries around there. So pretty much most places where we're covering, right? And you see the natural progression. We saw that payroll was a problem for us because you'd have to go and use third parties in order to run payroll for your EOR customers, right? And then there's a disjointed level of service because you're using a third party. SLAs around kind of response rates. If someone has a question about their payroll and it's wrong, then you need to be very fast. If you're using third parties, you won't necessarily get that speed of delivery. So we embarked upon an area to be able to bring a lot of payroll kind of in-house. So we acquired a number of different payroll organizations across the world, and we continue to do that. So then we're actually running all of our payroll in-house versus actually using third parties. And that solved a lot of the problem around response rates around EOR, but then it presented another opportunity. It's like, now we've got payroll in-house. We can actually start to run payroll for a lot of organizations globally. When I was at DOT, we used to have different providers in different markets. So I'd have a provider in Italy and a different one in Belgium and a different one in the Netherlands and a different one for the UK. It was fragmented. And being able to have that single point is very interesting. We then started to go onto the Deal HR. We started to integrate with other HR platforms in order to migrate some of the EORs over there. But naturally, there's an evolution. We're creating our own HRIS. There's we're looking at learning and development, right? There's news to come on that. And how do we integrate kind of an LMS into the Deal suite, right? So there's a continuation and a continual movement of the global HR landscape.
I love it, and it's very exciting to witness up close what Deal is doing and what you're achieving, and just to think that the company started only 4 years ago is absolutely incredible. And Alan, I think we don't have any more questions in the chat. Thank you, Zoe and Alina, especially for asking the questions. Alan, what's the best way for people to connect with you? Is that over LinkedIn?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn. So I do pay close attention to my LinkedIn. I do read the messages. I do get a lot of volume of messages on there. So I do have an automation on there that says, if you thank you for reaching out. If it's about a job or something, then please look at our careers page. Just ignore that. I will respond.
Okay, great. That is super helpful. Ellen, thank you so much for being our guest. We're going to see a lot of you at our meetup as well in Amsterdam in 2.5 weeks' time. And it was an absolute pleasure to actually work with you and your team. You have an incredible team of sources and recruiters. That was an absolute pleasure for us to work with. Ellen, thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you also, because I think your team did a phenomenal job when you came in for a project, right? So drove immense value. So again, thank you for you and your team for doing that.
Appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap. Right on time with Ellen. And next week we have an interesting speaker, because we have Michael Wolford. He's a best-selling author. He's a talent intelligence leader at Clara Analytics, and he's going to provide a lot of interesting wisdom. It's the first time to have Michael on this webinar series, so I'm really excited to learn from a new speaker. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on LinkedIn, and I really, really hope to see you next week. Thank you very much.